This is the Motorola Defy Satellite Link. This lets you send messages back and forth and do SOS via satellite. So places where you don't have cellular Wi-Fi connection like the backcountry. It's similar to an inReach, but it's way, way cheaper. And it uses satellites that are, instead of a couple hundred miles off the surface of the Earth, they're thousands of miles, over 22,000 miles off the surface of the Earth. So the question is, does this work? It's cheaper, but does it work? Well, I took it out from, I guess Monday, came out here in the States, and I've had it out every day in the rugged Santa Ana Mountains here and the canyons and on the trails, putting it through its paces. And in this video, I will show you how it works. I'll share with you how it performed in these challenging conditions. And we'll also compare it to the inReach and the Zoleo, because maybe those things are a better fit. There are some differences that I will cover. Now, I think it's important to note that this is not sponsored by or affiliated with Motorola or Bullitt, the company that runs the service, in any way. They were kind enough to answer some questions I sent them via email, but otherwise this is completely independent, sponsored by people like you. All you have to do is use the links underneath the video here to buy this thing or anything from REI or Amazon, and I get a little commission, and it helps me do tests like this. So thank you for that. And if you're liking the video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're watching this a little bit later, I will post any updates, firmware updates, functionality changes, whatever it might be, underneath the video. I'll pin that in the comments, so check that out too. All right, let's dive in. This thing is super small and lightweight. It's under 70 grams. It's smaller than a deck of cards. It's rugged, built for the outdoors. The buttons have a little click feel to them. There's a haptic or buzz feedback once you've successfully pressed a button. It's a mil spec, an IP, whatever, 6.8. The one thing I would say is that there is no carabiner. It just has this little clip on top. So I just took a carabiner and I clipped it and I put it onto my backpack this way. One thing I did notice is that the SOS button is not covered or anything. So if you're carrying this in your pack, it might get pressed accidentally. You might want to put it in some kind of case. Maybe the next version will have a cover there. But otherwise, the physical unit worked flawlessly. It uses USB-C to charge, and it comes with a little cable, USB-C to USB-A. Everything worked great in terms of this piece of hardware as a unit. I had a couple of hiccups when I was setting it up, and I think that's because I didn't use the quick start. What I'd recommend doing is taking a little piece of paper with a QR code, scanning it, and going through that quick start to set it up. You're going to have to download the Bullitt app, and you set up an account within the app. You need a data connection. You can't just take this out into the backcountry and set it up there, so you have to set it up in the front country. It's interesting because it uses your phone number as essentially your account ID, and it says that when it sends, it uses your phone number. It doesn't actually send from your phone number, but it says the message is from this person at this phone number. So that's how it works. It doesn't have a dedicated phone number or email like the Zoleo, but you can message back to it, which I'll show you in a second or two. That's how the setup works. You pair it with Bluetooth then to your phone. It works with iPhone and Android. Really easy to pair and set up. That wasn't a problem. Once it's set up, you're going to want to set up some of the other aspects. If you look at the settings on the side over here, there's some things you can do. You can set up your SOS emergency contact. You can also leave some information about who you are, the type of hiker, any medical conditions you might have. For the check-in message, you can only have these pre-baked messages here. They give you a choice, but you obviously can choose who you want to send that to, and you can trigger this check-in with the check-in button on the device here just by holding this down for a little bit. So that's how the check-ins work. I'll go into the plans and the messaging, how the messaging works in a second, but that's essentially the setup. You know, give it a charge and you're ready to go out with it. Primarily, this is a messaging device, so you're sending messages back and forth. You're using the Bullitt app to do that, and the Bullitt app, like the Zoleo app and the new Garmin Messenger app, will automatically switch to Wi-Fi or cellular if those connections are possible. So you don't have to worry about whether you're in range or not, whether it's going to use the satellites. If it doesn't have a cellular connection, it'll use the satellites. And the currency of the plans is a message. So whether you send a check-in, whether you send a custom message, or whether you receive a message, those all count as a message. It's not an unlimited check-in situation. Sending a message is sending a message on these things. So That's how the plans work. There's 3 levels of plans. The lowest, I think you get 30 messages per month. Now, what's really cool is that if you sign up for this soon, I'll put a link to the sign up page under the video, but they have an offer where if you buy one of these units and they're 150 bucks now, you will get a year's free service at the basic plan, which is 30 messages a month. So that's pretty great. 150 bucks, 30 messages a month for free. After that, you will pay $5 a month, I think, for that basic 30 message plan. Now, compared to an inReach and a Zoleo, it doesn't have any navigation functions in there. You can't get the weather. And right now it doesn't have a breadcrumb trail. But Bullitt did say that they will be introducing that later in the year as an add-on to your plan. So that is coming. Overall, the plans are just simple. They're way less than the Garmin plans are, and they're actually cheaper than Zoleo too. $5 a month for the minimum plan. And I think that's pretty reasonable considering one of these, fancy coffees, this isn't even a fancy coffee, is $5. So $5 a month, 30 messages, that's how it all works. Another important difference between this and the inReach and the Zoleo is that this does not have a global footprint. Right now, this works in parts of Europe. I think the mainland United States, soon it will work in Canada and Alaska, and I think there's a plan to roll it out to more places over time, but you don't have the worldwide footprint like you do with the Iridium network that Garmin, inReach, and Zoleo use. So if you're going to Antarctica and stuff, this is probably not going to work. I'll talk about the satellite system in a second, but important to note that this only works in a few places. But I think for a lot of people who maybe just hike in their local region in the States or whatever, you should be fine. Now, sending a message is dead simple. You just go into the Bullitt app and you select a recipient. It has to be a phone number. You can't just do it to an email. It has to be a phone number or somebody who has the Bullitt app. Select a recipient and then type your message in. If you want to include your location, you hit this little icon here and it'll put your latitude and longitude in decimal form here. And if you go over, it turns red, real intuitive. Once you're done, you hit the send button. Now, the Bullitt app will check for a cellular or a Wi-Fi connection. If it has that, it'll send the message via that. It doesn't cost towards your message allotment. If it doesn't have that, it'll try to use the satellites. Now, you have to be connected to a satellite to do this. If you click this button in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see your connection status. You can also look at the unit. It'll blink green down here if it's connected, red if it's not, but assuming you're connected, it will send via satellite. When it does that, these messages look different. The bubbles look different because they have this little orange tab on the side, and you get this little check mark too that says the message has been received by the satellite and it is on its way. So that's a helpful little piece of information to have. Now, what happens after that? If the person has the Bullitt app, they will get a notification in the Bullitt app, and messaging back and forth using this app is similar to something like WhatsApp or whatever. Obviously simpler because it's satellite based, but you can message back and forth and it will always try to do a data connection. And the person doesn't have to have a Defy unit or a Motorola or a satellite communicator to do this. Someone on the other end can just have the app and be in the front country on Wi-Fi and message back and forth. It's free for anyone to use, and you could just use this Bullitt app to Bullitt app, but that's how you message back and forth. Now, if they don't have a Bullitt account, they will get a text message, and in the text message, it will have a link to download the Bullitt app in order to message you back. So you can send your message, they'll get it via text, but if they want to message back, they have to download and get the Bullitt app, which is free, and they can set up a free account. Not a problem there. If you want to look at your location in the Bullitt app, it'll be a link, and that location will be linked to your default mapping program. Clicking on that link will bring you into Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever it is to show the location on there. So very straightforward, very simple. Now let's talk about performance, because this is one of the places where the Defy uses a whole different satellite system. Iridium, the Apple iPhone 14 satellite, Zoleo, they all use low Earth orbit satellites. Those are about 500 feet above the Earth's surface. The Defy uses geosatellites, which are over 22,000 feet above the Earth's surface in a geostationary orbit. So they are just sitting in one place above the Earth. They're basically going around the Earth at the same point. They're always in the same place. So that's kind of interesting. Now, In some ways, it probably shouldn't matter, right? Because these radio waves travel at the speed of light. 500 miles, 22,000 miles, the speed of light doesn't really matter, but it does have to travel through more of the atmosphere. There could be more atmospheric disturbances in different layers of the atmosphere. I was curious as to how this would work. And also, since these satellites are in one place all the time, how does that impact my connectivity if I am in a canyon and I don't have a line of sight to the satellite? So these were all the things that I was thinking about when I was testing it. First of all, I can tell you that when you do have a satellite connection, the messages go through at the speed of a regular text message. It blew my mind. It just blew my mind. Much quicker than the inReach, which usually takes a minute or two at least, I know, on a good day for a message to go through. These were going back and forth almost instantaneously, which is amazing. That said, there were times when I lost satellite coverage or satellite connection on the unit. And you can check it again by looking at the LED or looking at the status screen on there. And I try to narrow down when this was happening. And I think these geostationary satellites are on the southern horizon. And if you look on this information screen, for people in the United States, sorry, to the south, if you look on the information screen for the connection, it'll tell you where the satellite is. And I think I lost connection when I was hiking facing north, and I had this clipped on my body right here, and it had to travel through my back to get a line of sight to the south. So I found that interesting, and I was able to basically reestablish a connection, not just by taking it off and waving it around. That didn't work, but if I took it off, powered it off, and then faced it south and then powered it on, no matter how deep of a canyon I was in, it always established a connection right away. So I found that interesting, just something to be aware of. But in general, the connection was great. And when I had the connection, man, no complaints there. The specs for the Defy list up to 4 days of battery life, and it's a little bit loosey-goosey, but I get it because it depends on how much you're using it. I was out doing hikes 6 to 10 hours a day, maybe 3 or 4 texts back and forth with my wife every day. When I averaged it all out, I was getting somewhere between 60 and 70 hours of battery life on this, which I think is very respectable given that it's a very small device. I think if you're going out for long day hikes or weekend backpacking trips, it's going to be fine. And also, if you don't want to be constantly like waiting to get messages, you can just turn it off too and just turn it on when you want to send a check-in or when you need to hit SOS or whatever it might be. And then it will last, much longer, obviously. But having it on 65 to 70 hours, I like that it has a USB-C port because I carry a USB-C charger that I use for my headlamp and my phone and my camera. So it wasn't a big deal just to have this. I could always just charge this with the same system that I use to charge everything else. So overall, I think for such a small and light package, the battery life is very respectable. For any of these devices, when you hit the SOS button, there's a middleman who will connect you and your situation with the appropriate first responder, right? If you're in Arches National Park, they're not gonna, send the Coast Guard. They're gonna send the National Park Service. And this Defy device uses a company called Focus Point International. They're based out of Florida. They have offices all over the world, 24/7 coverage. I don't really know much about them. I saw that the Spot is using them. The Spot beacons use Focus Point as well. You go to their website, it says they operate in 220 countries or over 220, 200 calls a day. I did find some news stories that mentioned, hikers getting rescued, but they don't have like a blog with rescue stories. But they look legit. There's a handful of these companies around the world that do this type of thing. They have a Rolodex of all the emergency responders. They'll figure out who they need to call, put you in touch with them, and then you will have a two-way text communication through the Bullitt app, I guess, with the first responders, so you can tell them your condition or if things are changing. Now, one of the things that's interesting with Bullitt is that when you do hit SOS, there will be a questionnaire that will help the first responders know what type of situation you're in. This is something that we saw on the iPhone 14 emergency SOS. I have a video on that as well. I'll put a link to it up on the screen. I'll put it beneath here too. But interesting way to do it, and I think it'll save some steps ahead of time. Obviously, if you can't answer those because you're incapacitated, probably just go right through. I have not tested SOS on this, but if it's anything like the regular messaging, I have confidence in it, and I feel pretty good about Focus Point. But if they come up with some rescue stories or whatever, I'll update this post. I'll put that underneath so you can check those out. But That's how the SOS works. Feeling good about it. If I learn more, I will share it with you. First of all, if you've been holding off on getting a satellite communicator because they've been too expensive, I think this is the time to pull the trigger on one. 150 bucks with a year's coverage. After that, $5 a month, same as like a large cup of coffee most places. It's a no-brainer for something that can save your life. Not only save your life, but you can use this to potentially save other people's lives. You can use this to call for help if you find somebody on the trail who's injured. So for $5 a month, you could save somebody's life with something like this. It's a no-brainer to have one of these days. So definitely recommend getting it if you just want to have like a basic messaging service and SOS service in the backcountry. Now, if you need worldwide coverage, if you want to have navigation functions, if you want to have location sharing like a breadcrumb trail and weather reports, the inReach is still going to be your best bet, even though it's all more expensive. This is the Garmin inReach Mini 2. I highly recommend this. I've got a review for this on my YouTube channel and my website. This is a great unit as well. Only marginally heavier than this and basically really small, rugged, works great. So if you want the bells and whistles, if you want more coverage, this is a better move. The only reason I'd see to get a Zoleo right now is if you really want a dedicated number and dedicated email address. But you can do that same functionality essentially with the Garmin inReach now. There's a new messenger app, which I'll do a review on soon, but that gives you the same functionality as the Bullitt app. It uses your phone number for people to contact you if they have the app. So if you're out hiking, all people need to do is just download that app and they can communicate with you. Pretty simple at this point, and it works, again, just like a WhatsApp or something. So that's what I'd say. I will test out the location sharing when it comes out in this. I'll make a video and share that with you so you guys know what that's all about. And what am I gonna do? Well, right now I'm gonna use the inReach just because I'm out all the time and I wanna have that breadcrumb trail. But when the breadcrumb trail becomes available on the Defy, assuming that it works well and it's good, I'm gonna use that in conjunction with my iPhone 14. And then I will have redundant satellite communications in the backcountry and a form factor like this, which is amazing. So I'll have SOS on the phone, SOS on here, messaging on here, and some basic location sharing on here and location sharing on here, all for $5 a month. When my plan expires, the iPhone right now is free for the emergency SOS via satellite. So it's amazing what the technology can do now and where it's all going. And obviously, if you want to learn more about this or stay in touch with new devices that come out, please subscribe. I will cover all of those here. And if you have any questions about the Defy, just leave me a comment on YouTube. I'll do my best to answer it. I'm going to be taking this out on the trail for the rest of the summer and seeing how it works, testing it out. So if there are any changes in terms of the connectivity or the performance, I will do a follow-up. I'll either put that in a comment under the video or do another video. So stay tuned for that as well. But thanks, guys, for watching. Thanks for all the supporters, and I'll see you out in the trails.